Hello, I'm Alex.
And I'm Marlin.
And welcome today to our review for the Movie Buff Reactions channel of the Nostalgia Critic and the top 11 scariest performances in his opinion. It's a video from 2010 from one of our favorites, Nostalgia Critic.
Yes, Nostalgia Critic is one of our favorites, and he has been doing this for a long time, and we enjoy this. The Movie Buff, I think he's down the hall down there. And I'm not sure that's a bathroom or not, but he'll be back soon. But he will edit anything he doesn't want to.
Oh, excellent.
Okay.
So maybe the majority of what we're putting together here. No. So the Nostalgia Critic, he makes lots of lists, and for this one, it's kind of a spooky or Halloween themed one, but he put together a list of the 11 scariest performances. So let's just hop right into it and see if what we agree with.
Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic. I remember it so you don't have to. And I'm still continuing the month of Nostalgia Week.
Oh, there's Charlie Brown. Vintage. Well, that's not so vintage. That's a whole nother dimension of Charlie Brown.
So, seeing how this is the month where everything is supposed to be scary, let's take a look at scary performances. We all know the traditional monsters and how iconic they've become, but a new breed of monsters has been evolving over the years. They constantly battle between what's human and what's inhuman.
Well, a few
and usually
creepers
the more
here.
removed they are from an ethical reality, the more frightening they become. Now keep in mind, I know a good performance isn't just a good performance. A lot of things go into it, like the writing, directing, music, lighting, all that good stuff. But still, these are the characters and performances where just thinking about them can send shivers down our spines. And we're here to honor the top 11 of them here today. Why top 11?
He always likes his +1 there. Yep. But he does make a good point with all the people behind the scenes, I think, initially there. Like, if they do a nice job, you don't appreciate, you know, all the work they do, although they are key to creating probably some of these scenes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, let's jump back. Oh, I like the effects here, the staircase and the font.
Bill Sikes from Oliver. This
Oh.
guy is just a bastard. He does it all. Kidnaps kids, steals from the wealthy, and even beats his own girlfriend, one of the main characters in the film, to death. What a fucked up creep.
Oh.
She will beat you, nobody knows.
And every time you look at him, you know he's ready to strike again. He doesn't care who gets in his way.
Oh.
If you say something wrong, your ass is going down.
You hand it over, you avaricious old skeleton.
Even with that thick Cockney accent, he still scares the living piss out of you.
Have you ever heard the sound the chicken makes when they're ringing off its nest? They squawks, Fagin. They squawks. Not a very pretty sound.
Hell, he can even make the act of calling his dog seem intimidating.
You ain't afraid of me, are you, Bullseye? Bullseye, you come here. Come here, Bullseye!
You can just tell actor Oliver Reed was throwing everything into it. And because of that, we get one hell of a creepy thug. Bill Sikes is definitely one baddie who will do anything to get his way.
I'm glad.
Oh, good start.
Number 10. The T-1000 from Terminator 2.
Huh?
I know a lot of people found Arnold to be pretty scary in the first Terminator, but let's be honest, it's still Arnold. He looks like a giant robot, talks like a giant robot, so it's pretty easy to guess that he's a giant robot. As well as easy to spot in a crowd. With Robert Patrick, though, he looks like any other person, and can even act like an everyday guy, blending into the crowd with nobody suspecting him.
You just said he was going to the Galleria, right?
The Galleria? But when he needs to kill, good God, nothing can stop him. He can turn into knives, he can turn into other people, he can imitate their voices, and plus, he's a cop! As if to say, even the fucking police are after you, kid. You don't have a prayer.
Call to John. Call John.
On top of that, he's chasing a child in this one, which seems much more vulnerable.
Second
than
one in a
chasing
row
grown
here
woman.
with the
Granted, he's
intimidating
a strong
children
kid,
theme.
but he's still a kid, and this is as basic a boogeyman as you can come up with. You can't reason with him, you can't hurt him, and all he wants to do is kill you. If that's not scary as fuck, I don't know what is.
Say, that's a nice bite.
Nice bike.
Number 9. Annie Wilkes from
Oh,
Misery. The role that won Kathy Bates an Oscar, this psychotic bitch's
Can we
32
turn
flavors
this
of
off?
crazy. She helps save the life of her favorite author in the world, and then goes crazy when she finds out he's killing off her favorite character.
I don't want her dead! I want her! And you murdered her!
She straps him to a bed, breaks both of his legs, and forces
Ah!
him to write a sequel to the book, where Misery is brought back.
Oh, jeez. We have
That
to turn
wasn't
this off.
creepy enough. She constantly swings back and forth between sensitive and kind.
You've got a lot of recovering to do. And I consider it an honor that you'll do it in my home.
Straight to...
This is like Catholic school all over again.
Bat. Actually, for me, the screaming and yelling parts always seem a bit over the top. It's when she was nice and pleasant that really got me on edge. But maybe that's because I know that anything could set her off.
Oh, Paul. What a poet you are.
Aw, well, isn't she
Oh.
just the nicest?
How is this not in the top 5?
I think this is every celebrity's worst nightmare, to be in the hands of an obsessive fan who's not mentally well. I mean, poor James Caan shut up,
Whoa,
has a lot to
easy
deal
there.
with in this movie. But hey, look at the bright side. At least you weren't casting about Schmidt.
Oh!
Ooh.
I think I just
No
threw up
doubt
in my
about
mouth
it,
a
Annie
little bit.
Wilkes is one nutty lady that nobody should have to wake up to.
He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car!
Oh,
Number 8.
take a break here.
Hannibal Lecter.
Oh!
Now, I'm just going to be very honest about this. I never really found Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs that scary. I actually thought Buffalo Bill
He's
was the one
spooky. Yeah, oh,
because he
yes,
actually
yes.
seemed
Good,
like a
very
real-life
good.
serial killer. For me, Hannibal Lecter was more like a James Bond villain. He had all the poetic lines, keeping his head down
That's a good
with an evil
point.
smile. All I was missing was a cat for him to stroke. I wouldn't really mind, except that the rest of the movie is so bent on being brutally
The lotion in the
realistic.
basket.
And for me, this kind of seems out of place.
You fly back to school now, little starling. Fly.
Come on, that's pretty silly. Now granted, the first time you see him is pretty damn creepy. Just how he's standing in the middle of the room
Hello,
like you can
Clarice.
smell her coming down the hallway, that's unsettling. But there's just a hamminess to this performance that always sort of rubbed me the wrong way. You're funny. So yeah, I bashed him so much, you're probably wondering why the hell did I even put him on this list? Well, to be honest, I thought he was scary in Red Dragon. Yeah, I know he's like a bajillion years old and that's really distracting, but in this movie, I find him more scary because he actually wants to get Edward Norton and figures out ways from inside his cell to try and hurt him. That's freaky as hell. You can lock him up and he can still get you. In Silence of the Lambs, I knew he wasn't going to attack Jodie Foster. In fact, she even mentions it at some point.
He won't come after me.
Oh, really?
He won't. I can't explain it. He would consider that rude.
But in Red Dragon, he fucking hates this guy. And even behind a glass wall, he can still find a way to attack both him and his family.
Which one are we
That's
doing, though?
diabolical. It's like there's no way to stop it.
Let's stick to one performance, right?
But not on Molly and Josh, I take it.
They're safe now.
No one will ever be safe around you, Will.
I also like the fact that it's much more a challenge of wits. In Silence of the Lambs, Foster just sort of looks at Lecter's antics with frightened awe. In Red Dragon, Norton doesn't take any of that shit.
Okay, it's just performances as an actor, in character. But
Give me the file, then. And I'll tell you what I think.
This makes their relationship more interesting to me. It just builds up the tension between the two. It makes the hero more interesting and the villain more angry, which in turn makes him more threatening. Now I will say though, a lot of people argue that it's much more threatening when an evil person loves you as opposed to hates you. And to be honest, I can see how that would be pretty scary too. So in this category, I'm saying Hannibal Lecter from both The Silence of the Lambs and Red Dragon are on the list. And for those of you wondering why I didn't put Hannibal on there, with the brain and the spoon. That was stupid. And anybody who likes it is stupid too. I know it's just my opinion, but I'm right.
Nice Chianti.
Number 7. Alex from A Clockwork
oh,
It's hard to believe that not only is this this crazy teen supposed to only be in high school, but we're also supposed to, oddly
You
enough,
can't watch this one with the lights off.
After all, what's not identifiable about murder, rape, beatings, breaking and entering, and being a complete psychotic nut?
Yes.
What does that great big horsey gape of a grin portend?
The kid is a sadist, plain and simple. He's not in it for the money or any kind of physical reward, for the most part. He's in it because he simply loves to do wrong, and sees almost an artistic life to it all.
Oh, bliss. Bliss and heaven. Oh, it was gorgeousness and gorgeosity made flesh.
He's a savage beast, but he listens to Beethoven. He feeds on the innocent, but is still intelligent and well-spoken. We've seen smart villains before, but what really separates him from other villains is two things. One is his age. The idea that a person this young would be doing so many terrible things is pretty disturbing. The second is just how much he enjoys it. The smile on his face is just pure delight.
Creepy.
He is in heaven. There is no remorse in what he is doing. For him, causing people pain is like reaching nirvana. Nirvana on a roller coaster. He simply loves every minute of it, to a point where he actually hums Singing in the Rain while raping an older woman. This scene is so traumatizing that there's still people out there who can't listen to that musical.
I'm singing in the rain.
I don't go that far. But, yes.
One of the most controversial characters in both film and literature, Alex is one of the scariest school children you'll ever come across.
I've taught you much, my little dreamies.
Creepy performance.
Number 6. Norman Bates from Psycho.
No, yeah.
Yet another character who just sort of keeps you guessing and guessing. You can't figure out if he's a good guy, a bad guy, an innocent pawn, or an evil plotter. All you know is that he's horribly obsessed with his mother. And the less you know about that, the better.
Did you go out with friends?
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Oh.
Every time you see him, you get nervous. You can't tell if he's just a poor soul or a time bomb waiting to go off.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
His twitching and sudden mood swings keeps the character a complete mystery until the very end. And without actually giving away the twist ending, let's just say every movie nowadays that does have a twist ending owes everything to this film.
Understand? I don't hate her. I hate what she's become.
If you haven't seen the movie yet, check it out and see how influential both the film and his performance was. And speaking of influences, where do you think
Looks
Alex
like my
got his
history
smile
teacher.
from?
But she's harmless. She's as harmless as one of those stuffed birds.
Oh, and if you're thinking about seeing the shot-by-shot remake, I have only one thing to say to you. Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates.
Well, there's that.
Number 5. The Gemini Killer from Exorcist 3. This film is sort of like the Planet of the Apes movies. If you can buy the absurdity of it all, it's actually a pretty damn good film. You just
This is kind of an
really gotta
interesting
stretch your
selection.
suspension of disbelief. And one of the things that makes it so effective is Brad Dourif and Jason Miller as the Gemini Killer. Sort of a long story, but after the death of Damien in the first Exorcist movie, another spirit known as the Gemini Killer sneaks in. Therefore, we sometimes see the person as Damien or as the killer, and both are pretty damn scary. Jason Miller does well switching personalities.
There is suffering over there. They can be cruel. Who is they? Never mind. I do that rather well. Don't you think?
While Brad Dourif does well actually being one of the personalities.
Do you dance? What do you mean?
Both range from gentle whispers to blood-curdling screams, never
There are
knowing
definitely
what's going to come out.
portions of this performance that are creepy.
Moves through the vein, under the crease of the arm, as he watches while I rip and cut and mutilate the innocent, his friends, and again and again and on and on. He is inside with us. He will never get away. His pain won't end.
The film was directed by the author of the original Exorcist book, and he certainly shows an understanding of both suspense and horror. Is it as good as the first film? No. Can it be far-fetched? Sometimes. But it's still a really creepy and nerve-tingling movie, with haunting visuals, creepy ideas, and of course, 2 great performances as the Gemini Killer.
Come in, Father Morning. And
See, I wouldn't put it over the last
this time
4 we've seen, right? See, I think this is a nice number 10.
Number 4. The Joker from The Dark Knight.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost pointless to talk about this performance as I've talked about it so much, but I think everybody was taken back at just how terrifying Heath Ledger was as the Joker. We know nothing about his past, family, or friends. We just know that his goal is to simply spread chaos.
introduce a little anarchy, upset the established order. Everything becomes chaos.
He's like a demon that can't be destroyed, but the most disturbing part is, he makes it sound like he shouldn't be destroyed, like he's part of the grand plan. He makes it sound like it's the natural order, that he's humanity fully realized.
When the chips are down, these civilized,
So dark. Yeah.
they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
We don't know if he was born that way or had to go through some sort of crazy series of events, but either way, he's bad news. Both Ledger and Nolan took what was primarily an old-school comic book villain and turned him into the embodiment of anarchy and chaos. But there's hints of a dark reality that lies in him too, and I think that's where the real fear comes from. I think we can all agree the scariest scene is the one that seemed the most realistic, as the shaky camera and the bad audio truly added to the grittiness of this murder scene. Combining the dark side of comics with the dark side of reality, the Joker is one evil clown we will soon be forgetting.
Why so serious?
Number 3,
Definitely the creepiest Joker performance
Anton from No
that I've
Country
seen.
for Old Men.
Oh!
It was actually pretty
Very
hard
worthy number
deciding
3,
who was
if
creepy,
not number 1.
Anton or the Joker. I decided to go with Anton for one main
Oh!
reason. Unlike the Joker who wants to be anarchy and misery, I think Anton
We have to
feels
turn it
he
off
has
again.
to be anarchy and misery. Like there's no other choice. That's just another level of depression to add to this character.
I literally had to lock the door when I watched this.
I'll always say the same thing.
So creepy.
What did I say?
They say you don't have to do this.
He doesn't really smile that much, so he's not fully enjoying what he's doing. It's like a strange fixation that if he doesn't do certain horrible things, the world will be thrown out of alignment. Much like the Joker, we don't know why he's come to this conclusion, but it's pretty obvious nobody's changing his mind. You just look at him and you think unpleasantness. How does he see the world
Very
when he feels
powerful.
he has to do these things?
I won't tell you can save yourself, because you can't.
The whole movie itself is basically about the evolution of the dark criminal mind and how it's only getting worse, evolving to a point where not only can we not control it, but even more disturbing, we can't understand it. Anton is the perfect representation of that. Not
Just his
feeling,
look.
never satisfied, doesn't know if he's doing the right thing or the wrong thing, but above all, doesn't care. Every word he says is beyond cryptic, as well as confusing.
You got no cause to hurt me.
No. But I gave my word to your husband.
That don't make sense.
I mean, when has a coin
The
toss
coin.
ever been so fucking terrifying? I don't think so. A little bit. But this still takes the cake.
Two-Face.
I didn't put nothing up.
Yes, you did. You've been putting it up your whole life. You just didn't know it.
I need to know what I stand to win.
Everything. You stand to win everything, call it.
Oh,
Everything has a meaning, but everything also means nothing. Total shit your pants philosophy.
You can put it in your pocket and chew like a quarter. Or it'll get mixed in with the others and become just a coin. Which it is.
Anton's that stranger you hope never to meet in the middle of nowhere.
Who is it? You know who it is.
now see, locking the door was pointless. He could have shot out the lock.
Regan from The Exorcist. Considered
Anton
to be
scares
the
me
scariest
more.
movie of all time. The Exorcist
But
all
still
centers
spooky.
around a girl
Obvious.
who
This is a
possessed by
classic.
something not of this world. Is it the devil? Maybe. Is it one of his followers? Who knows? But one thing we can figure out is that Regan is not alone.
Where's Regan?
In here.
with us.
Yeah.
On top of Linda Blair's fantastic performance, we also have the voice talent of Mercedes McCambridge, who has one of those creepy voices where you can't really tell if it's a man or a woman, which just makes it all the more surreal.
How long are you planning to stay in Regan?
Until she rots and lies stinking in the earth.
On top of that, the makeup, the lighting, and the overall direction makes the idea of a possessed girl seem surprisingly plausible.
Your mother sits here with his curse. Would you like to leave a message? I'll see that she gets it.
You really feel like you're there as all this shit is going on, and so did a lot of other people apparently. Audience members went screaming out of the theaters when they first saw this film, and even today they continue to show it in theaters around Halloween. Why? Because it still gets a shock out of people.
I'm Damien Counts.
And I'm the devil. Now kindly undo these straps.
This little demon brat was scary back then and is still scary now. She had everything: a spinning head, green vomit, telekinesis, voices she could imitate, shape-shifting. She had it all. And I guess she might have been a murderer too, but I don't know. Is the idea when Father Merrin is found dead that he died over a heart attack, or did Regan kill him? If she killed him, how exactly did that work? Hey, Father, look over there. All right. Whatever
I
happened,
think she
there's
killed.
certainly no doubt that little Regan definitely had more than one
It's a
person
classic.
in her.
It's definitely a worthy addition.
And the number one scariest performance
What is this? Is it worthy?
Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Why? Because he's
Different.
everything inspiring and terrifying about
Different.
the evolution of man. He's the supreme computer, has artificial intelligence, and can come to
Google.
logical conclusions on his own.
I would recommend that we put the unit back in operation and let it fail. We can certainly afford to be out of communication for the short time it will take to replace it.
Now we
But with
just
that
make
comes
Alexa's
thinking
voice a
that
lot
only runs
sweeter.
on logic. And when the
Or
computer
Siri.
sees the crew of the ship as a danger to the mission, he destroys them. No second thoughts, he just destroys them.
During the past few weeks, I've wondered whether you might be having some second thoughts about the mission.
There's no sympathy, no reasoning, just logic.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
Everything he says, no matter how creepy, is always in that monotone voice. He's never happy, sad, or angry. It's not like a person where you can argue to their emotional side. With Hal, you know there's no emotional side. If he thinks you should go, you're gone. And he'll use everything that mankind has programmed into him to carry it out.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
The other creepy thing is Hal knows about the human animal and does everything he can to trick them. Like pretending he can't hear them in the space pod when he's secretly reading their lips. Or how about when he tries to play to Dave's emotional side by flat out lying to him?
I know everything hasn't been quite right with me. I feel much better now. I really do.
He'll do anything to complete the mission, and what makes him so scary is that we designed him that way. We have nobody to blame but us. In many ways, he's the ultimate accomplishment, but in others, he's the ultimate fuck-up. We can't blame him because we'd be blaming ourselves. And the sinister determination that Hal has is a direct representation of what we pride. Efficiency at any cost.
It can only be attributable to human error. This sort of thing has cropped up before, and it has always been due to human error.
Hal is scary because of his voice, his actions, and most of all where he came from. Us. He's a cautionary tale of not only where mankind could be going, but what we can, have, and will ultimately become.
Give me your land, Sir.
And those are my top 11 scariest performances. And for those of you wondering why I didn't put Tim Curry from It on there, don't worry. Enlightenment will be coming next week.
So that was his list. What do you think?
That's quite a list. There are a lot of things on there that are frightening. There were a couple of things that didn't. There's a difference between something being spooky and something being frightening. And for me, it's when I put myself into that situation with them. Now, like Anthony Perkins in Psycho, to me that was always interesting and spooky and creepy, but it wasn't fearful. It didn't do that for me.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's an important distinction to make. Because he called this his scariest performances ever, whereas I think if they renamed it maybe creepiest performances ever, I think that's probably more appropriate. You see a lot of even like Friday the 13th, or, you know, makes you jump out of your seat. For me, that's scary. And, I mean, there were some scary moments in some of these films, but I think what gets these, you know, more fearful and producing more anxiety is just the creepiness of these ordinary characters. So I do agree that there's a big distinction here.
But I go along with him on things about characters who are gentle or well-spoken, who are educated, who can be openly sympathetic, and then they swing around.
If they can blend into society pretty easily, they could be anywhere. They could, well, obviously I don't think the Joker's going to be anywhere, but you know, they could be anywhere and you don't even know.
Especially if you're the android from Terminator 2. He can be anywhere. Yeah. And he never stops. He just keeps coming, and that kept me on the edge of my seat for all the Terminator movies. How are they going to stop? How are they going to stop this thing?
And for me, another thing I appreciated from the list is just how he reached back several decades. He had a nice cross-section of different time periods here. He had a lot of movies from the 70s all the way through more current films. So I did like how he took a cross-section of years there.
Yeah, and I think that's why Linda Blair's performance, that was like groundbreaking.
Yes.
People went screaming from the movie, from the theaters, because they had never seen anything like that before. Right.
You have to appreciate them for the time, the effects that they had going at the time. Because if they showed it today, people, oh, it doesn't even look realistic. But from the time period, the perspective of what they had available for them. But
Kathy Bates, the thing that was the most scary about it, here is somebody who took care of this man and then broke his legs. With a sledgehammer and a block between.
I wish you would stop mentioning, I can't even talk about this. Still, you see that scene once and you So let's get into the list. I mean, he had 11 different characters here in his scariest performance. I agree with many of them. I don't know if I agree with all of them. I'd like to hear which ones you have mentioned, Kathy Bates so far, and Terminator. Were there any others that you really thought were very worthy entries into this list? Which ones did you find the creepiest or scariest?
Anton.
Anton, we agree on that one. Yeah.
He was like a Terminator without having anything other than just relentless
malice. Yeah. And his weapon of choice was just so out there, you know, but deadly.
Yes,
but, you know,
just a shot of pressure.
Yeah.
That was clever, very clever.
And I know when I watched that movie, I had no idea what I was getting into. So the complete shock value of what that movie was and who that character was and just the depth of the time that they took to develop that character, I thought it was a brilliant film. I think it's one of the best films I've ever seen.
Yes, and it was just part of him. He had no remorse. It was something he had to do. Just like the young lad in the Derby on... What was the movie? I can't come up with the name.
Clockwork Orange?
Clockwork Orange.
Alex.
He was...
No relation, okay.
That was a frightening performance throughout.
And creepy. Like, that was way more psychotic, creepy performance, right? Well, more like the Joker. There were some fearful moments, for sure.
You're picking me up on that. That's true. That's true.
And that one is just depraved. That whole movie and that performance is depraved. And not like the Joker isn't, you know, and not like Anton isn't, and not like many of these others aren't. But I do think that Alex in Clockwork goes to that next level of creepiness and scariness. And there have been so many performances over time that have been here or here. You know, to go to that level, to be so memorable, all-time memorable, you know. So I would agree with that.
The The thing about the Hal performance that I really appreciate is that the whole film puts you in the place.
Yeah, the setting.
Because they've taken you hours to get you to this point where all of a sudden you are trapped.
Yeah, yeah.
You are trapped and it's just, you're watching yourself die.
Yeah. Now for me, see, this is one that I wouldn't put on the list myself. I respect your opinion, but see, for me, I don't know. It's just because he's a machine and you don't have that warped intent. This was just a cold, calculating computer. See?
But that's an Anton characteristic.
That's true, but he's that's a human gone wrong. But this is a computer gone right, just what we programmed him to do,
Just like the Terminator 2 cyborg.
I would also, see, I'm not the Terminator character. I'm going to agree to disagree on that one too, with Nostalgia Critic. I don't see that one as creepy as some others. I think there are some other performances that, we can talk about those later, that could have made the list, that maybe would have edged out some others, but let's take a look at the rest of the list here.
Okay, go ahead.
So we have Psycho, you mentioned that earlier. That's obviously another classic. That goes even further back, if I'm not mistaken. That's the earliest of the films that he reviewed here.
You're right, yeah.
Again, is it a scary film other than the slashing? Is this a scary? I don't think it's scary. I think it's really creepy, and the character himself is really creepy. Very well done. They show it in cinematography classes, just the different shots. They had the shot of the the bird of prey in the background there. You see all that symbolism there. I think it's creepy. Is it scariest? I think it's worthy for this list, but maybe not towards the top of the list.
Yes, I can. Yes, I'm with you there.
Then we mentioned Clockwork. We've got Silence of the Lambs. I'm not a huge fan how we combine those two performances, since I believe all of the rest of them were just one movie performance, a one movie based performance.
Right.
But if we were to take the Hannibal Lecter character, I think, for me at least, that would definitely make my list. Maybe not the top ones, but definitely would make my list.
Yeah, he kind of poo-pooed the scary aspect of the Hannibal character in Silence of the Lamb. And I didn't feel that way, because here is this guy, he talks in this, again, educated, and he talks in a creepy voice, so you got that going. But, but he's never, all of a sudden, he's ripping the face off of somebody, putting it on, wearing it out of a building to make an escape. I mean, it just, whoa.
He's calculating, he's unset. You are unsettled the entire time that you are with that character. You never know what he's capable of. He shows what he's capable of at the end. So I would still put The Silence of the Lambs as a worthy film on this list.
Yes.
Even though he dismisses it. So I think we agree on that one. They mentioned the Gemini Killer in Exorcist 3. That one's an unconventional pick again, I think. I think there's some worthy moments in that performance that I would even put in the scary category. But how about for you?
I have never seen the film. I can give you no worthwhile comment.
Yeah. The film itself I thought was a little inconsistent at times, but overall, again, these are some of those border entries, I think, inside of that top 10 performance. And then how about the Oliver character? This is one I'll have to admit that I've never seen. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No, but I hadn't seen it either, but just because of he is so brutal. And it's in most parts with children, people who have no recourse.
Yeah.
But I can't say that. No.
So that one would probably not make our lists. All right, if we were to make this. Dark Knight, I think that's a definite top 5. One of the most iconic performances of all time with the Joker. You recently saw the new Joker movie. How do you feel that character compares? Now we're breaking our own rule, right? But
I think that's okay, because the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix was it was a prequel.
Yeah.
And so it was just an excellent production, but it left you at a place where
this could pick up.
Absolutely, and it gave you a lot of insight into his madness.
So maybe the Joker, combo performances here. We're breaking the rules here because different actors. But definitely Dark Knight, a dark performance, classic performance. Gone Too Soon, Heath Ledger, makes our list. And then I think we've covered them all at that point. We discussed Misery, definitely one of my top 5, if not higher, creepy performances. It's interesting, I believe that's the only Stephen King selection in the entire list from the King of Horror, and that's the only pick. Although sometimes we know that some of the Stephen King films lack a little bit in the quality department when they get adapted, and maybe that's in part why there's only one Stephen King character. But
it could possibly be, yes.
Yeah. So I think that begs the question: if we've identified, we've agreed with maybe 5 or 6 of these, maybe a few more that would make our own top 10 or top 11 lists of creepiest or scariest performances. Is there any that any characters not on this list that you think might make a list if you were to make a list?
I don't think I'm intellectually competent to come up with that off the top of my head.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm thinking like Darth Vader. I mean, how could they leave that? Or, Voldemort from the Harry Potter. He made this review at a time where both of these characters would have been part, of the available pool of characters. Of course, I'm Star Trek based, so I always go back to Khan. They had a literal shout out to Khan there. I think he had a pretty scary, creepy performance. Maybe creepy, scary in a different way, right? But it seemed to kind of go around that particular fantasy or sci-fi whole genre of creepy characters, right? And of course, we didn't have too much horror either. I mean, we didn't have any Freddy in there, or Jason. There's none of those classic slasher type of characters either in this list.
But those were almost like villain movies. These are in these cases more villains within movies.
Yeah, that's true. And it really is that fine line there between scary versus creepy, I think. And he's kind of really defining that. But Voldemort, that's pretty darn creepy. That's just for me. And I'm sure as soon as we press stop on this video, we can probably come up with 5 or 6 more, scary or creepy performances that we just didn't remember for here today.
Yeah, when the movie buff comes back, they'll say, well, why didn't you talk about... Right. But he's so picky.
So that's all we have today. Again, always appreciate a good list. I love a good list. This is definitely a thought-provoking list, if nothing else, from the Nostalgia Critic. Appreciate the way that he put it all together. It was well spliced together. I like how he spread it across generations, and definitely a conversation starter. So
yes, he did his usual fine job with the production value was great, but his presentation skills are they're tough to beat.
Yep. All right. And I think that's all we have for today. Really enjoyed doing this reaction video with you today.
It's been fine, and we'll just see what the boss thinks.
All right, sounds good. So until next time, enjoy.